So Peterson had his legendary debate with Zizek. This is a brief commentary not on the exchange itself, but on a rather interesting observation Zizek made, something that he called the shock of his life.
Nazi officers have to do SS horrible things. How to enable them to do it without themselves becoming horrible beings? His solution was Oriental wisdom. To learn to act from distance, I am not really there, and was the shock of my life. Based on this, do you know the book? I found a book, the guy then wrote many books, Brian Victoria, Zen at War. It's a shocking book, especially horrible for many so-called anti-Eurocentrists who claim our monotheism is guilty of everything, we need Oriental. Yeah, but that book is about apart from a couple of exceptions, the behavior of Zen Buddhist community in Japan in the 30s, early 40s. Not only they totally supported Japanese expansion into China, they even provided properly Zen Buddhist justification for it. For example, the one, you know who did this? No, you are not as old as me, I remember him, DT Suzuki, the great yeah, but okay, he was doing this in the 60s, but as a younger guy, he was fully supporting Japanese militarism, and one of his justifications was this one, the advice of Japanese military to them to support Zen Buddhist training. Because he says, it's one of the most horrifying things that I've ever read, he said, sorry, don't take it personally, but let's say an officer orders me, if I were to tell this to you, it would be too obvious, so I pick you, I have to kill you, stab you with my knife. And he says, if I remain in this illusionary self, then I feel responsible, I kill you. But he says, if you are enlightened by Zen Buddhism, then you know there is no substantial reality. You become a neutral observer of your life, just a flow of phenomena, and you tell yourself, it's not that I'm killing you, but in the cosmic dance of phenomena, my knife is floating and somehow your knife false. You know what I'm saying? This, I'm not disputing some spiritual greatness of Zen Buddhism. I'm saying how even the most enlightened this spiritual experience can serve a terrible cause.
Zizek's shock over what he read in the book he mentions, which is Zen and War, reminded me in a way of what C.S. Lewis has to say about how it is justified for a Christian soldier to kill in wartime. So the section I'm about to read is from the book Mere Christianity, and this is from chapter 7, whose title, the chapter title is Forgiveness. Does loving your enemy mean not punishing him? No, for loving myself does not mean that I ought not to subject myself to punishment, even death. If you had committed a murder, the right Christian thing to do would be to give yourself up to the police and be hanged. It is therefore, in my opinion, perfectly right for a Christian judge to sentence a man to death or a Christian soldier to kill an enemy. I've always thought so, ever since I became a Christian, and not long before the war, and I still think so now that we are at peace. It is no good quoting, thou shalt not kill. There are two Greek words, the ordinary word to kill and the word to murder. And when Christ quotes that commandment, he uses the murder one in all three accounts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And I'm told there is the same distinction in Hebrew. All killing is not murder any more than all sexual intercourse is adultery. When soldiers came to St. John the Baptist asking what to do, he never remotely suggested that they ought to leave the army, nor did Christ when he met a Roman sergeant major, what they called a centurion. The idea of the knight, the Christian in arms for the defense of a good cause, is one of the great Christian ideas. So, when Zen Buddhist monks in Japan or Christian soldiers sacrificed their edict not to kill, let's just say an intellectual pattern, for a lower social pattern of tribalism, we enter a perplexing moral arena. Here is a taste of the point of view that would have allowed support for Japanese militarism. I'm reading these off of the Wikipedia page for that book, Zen and War. So there are 12 characteristics of Japanese Zen which has contributed to its support for Japanese militarism. The first one is subservience of Buddhism to the state. The second is Buddhist views on humanity and society. Though Buddhism emphasizes the equality of human beings based on their possession of a Buddha nature, the doctrine of karma has also been used as a moral justification for social inequality. Third is protection of the state and the hierarchical social structures. 4, emphasis on shunya and selflessness, leaving no room for the independence of the individual. 5 is lack of Buddhist dogma, which left no compelling basic dogma a believer would fight to preserve. So that's an interesting point. Number 6 is the concept of on, the teaching that a debt of gratitude is owed to those from whom favors are received. In the case of Japanese Zen, this gratitude is also owed to the emperor as the head of the entire Japanese family. Number 7, the belief in mutual dependency, which led in modern Japan to an organic view of the state coupled with a feeling of intimacy toward it. Number 8 is the doctrine of the middle way, which took the form of a constant search for compromise with the aim of avoiding confrontation before it occurred. That kind of makes sense in a way. Number 9, the tradition of ancestor veneration in which the entire nation came to be regarded as one large family, in which loyalty between subject and sovereign was the chief virtue. Number 10, the value given to the old and mature things, since society was based on a set of ancient and immutable laws. Opposition to this was unacceptable. So that is very anti-metaphysics of quality, I would say, on the one hand. There is no room for dynamism in that. Of course, in metaphysics of quality, things have a basis in ancient and immutable laws, but it's an evolutionary theory. Number 11 is emphasis on inner peace, which contributed to its failure to encourage and justify the will to reorganize society. And number 12 is the Buddhist logic of soku, just as it is, which leads to a static aesthetic perspective, a detached, subjective harmony with things. So that certainly sounds like what Suzuki was suggesting in terms of removing yourself from the act of killing that you are doing. Just, let the dagger just be as it is and detach yourself from it. So these points may not sound like the idealization of Buddhism we embrace in a very affluent and peaceful time in the West, but they are expressions of how a religion operates in the real world, and in a world that often, unlike us in this very serendipitous times, one that is often at war. So let me engage a quote from Pirsig, and this is from correspondence with Anthony McWatt. Is it moral, as the Hindus and Buddhists claim, to eat the flesh of animals? Our current morality would say it's immoral only if you're Hindu or Buddhist. Otherwise, it's okay, since morality is nothing more than social convention. An evolutionary morality, metaphysics of quality, on the other hand, would say it's scientifically immoral for everyone because animals are at a higher level of evolution, that is, more dynamic than grains, fruits, and vegetables. But, it would add, that this moral principle holds only where there is an abundance of grains, fruits, and vegetables. It would be immoral for Hindus not to eat their cows at a time of famine, since they would be killing human beings in favor of a lower organism. Is it the same for the enemy, a living human being capable of the highest intellectual static pattern, to be sacrificed for lower order social pattern of the tribe? This is really what we're asking. C.S. Lewis and DT Suzuki would say yes, to renounce defending one's tribe would likely mean self-sacrifice and martyrdom for all. So which one is more moral, tribalism or upholding one's precepts? People are going to die either way. self-sacrifice is an individual spiritual concern. Defending the tribe is a real-world concern. To sacrifice yourself and ultimately others to adhere to your spiritual principles would be like starving yourself to save a cow. Tribes evolved for mutual survival, and in times of war, I propose that quality would likely guide someone to band together to save their tribe. But as C.S. Lewis says, you would not do this with relish or out of revenge. It is with a deep desire that we wish it were not so, and deep understanding that the person you are killing is another human being. The reason C.S. Lewis makes so much sense to people is that he describes Christianity, a Christianity that requires adhering to the word of the Bible and to moral law, but also operates pragmatically with real life experience. And I do think that's what makes C.S. Lewis great. And I think this is what Pirsig is saying, and presumably this could be what Suzuki is saying and how the Zen monks behaved. The stark contrast of Buddhist monks who were supportive of a regime that was able to implement the rape of Nanking is indeed shocking. So potentially the real sticking point and the shock for Zizek and for anyone who has a preconceived notion of that Buddhism is about pure peace and that there is an inherent acquiescence in Buddhism may be let's just say distressed to find that there's possibly another way of looking at it. So to quote Pirsig again, to reject that part of the Buddha that attends to the analysis of motorcycles is to miss the Buddha entirely. To reject parts of religion that help you operate and survive in the real world is to miss the point of religion. But ultimately, there are two sides to religion. We know this. On the one hand, the implementation of a moral doctrine in the real world, which tends to be flawed, but is inescapable as are dominance hierarchies and other biological and social behaviors. On the other hand, there is the mystical idealism, which you could call quality, and which we as individuals will hopefully cultivate to the best of our ability. This is again a quote from Pirsig. The metaphysics of quality says, as does Buddhism, that the best place on the wheel of karma is the hub, and not the rim where one is thrown about by the gyrations of everyday life. But the metaphysics of quality sees the wheel of karma as detached to a cart that is going somewhere. So I hope that made sense, and I will see you next time. So I just wanted to say real quick, emotionally, I'm with Zizek on this one, but it's kind of a complicated issue. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.